all of these guys were giving out beautiful shares. It reminds me कि ये जिंदगी के रास्ते और काफिले भी कुछ अजीब है, हम वहीं से गुजरते हैं जहाँ रास्ते नहीं। We aspire to reach in our careers destinations, and somehow as we begin the journey, we are unable to find the road that takes us to the journey, and that frustrates us tremendously on where we want to be. For the last 2 days, as I was presenting myself and I'm wanting to say, what should I tell people out here about career management, performance management, succession planning, etc., etc. I was wondering as to what is the quintessence of the message I should be sharing with you guys. And I really could not come because I could make a summary of what I wanted to talk about and say that's the quintessence of the message. Till I went this day morning to this club which is on the way, because one of my mentees said, sir, if you're coming all the way, why don't I give you some coffee and we talk over the coffee. So the Karnavat club is where I went, and I got the quintessence of the message. It says every exit is an entrance somewhere else. Think about it. Every exit is an entrance somewhere else, and every entrance is an exit from somewhere else. And if you go beyond the message that the club was trying to tell you that ये exit भी हो सकता है, ये entry भी हो सकता है, and if you were to get into the deeper thought of what the concept was all about, careers in organizations and your own career in life is based on exactly the same concept, and I'll tell you where it comes. Would you like to sit or? It says that the most important thing in life for us to do is that in this whole fast-changing world that we find ourselves in, it is very difficult for us to find one navigational map that we are looking out for. Each one of us is actually on a search कि मुझे एक blueprint दे दो आप जो मैं follow करूँगा, and then I will reach the destination I want to reach. Which is what most companies tend to make people believe when they recruit people, that we also help you build a career, blah, blah, blah. And then the day you join the organization, you realize that actually there is no such real thing that's going to happen. Or maybe a few days later when you talk to the seniors in the organization who have joined before you, and you find out that there is no such great career planning that the organization has done. And since then, the disillusionment creeps in, constantly making you search for it and wanting you to discuss and desire and determine as to what is the career that you need to be following. Because the greatest blunder is we are all searching out for one blueprint, for one navigational map which will tell us where to do and what to do. And such a map does not exist. Because if it existed, so many people before you would have found that map and worked on it, but when you talk to them, you will find out that there is no such one map. What therefore do people need to do? What is it that I should be leaving as a message to you is number one, that in this fast-changing world, where destinations keep getting redefined, once in a span of 5 years, your whole destination gets redefined. And in that redefined destination, what career options emerge are so new that you may not even know that these are careers that 5 years down the line will open up for you, and you will not know that those are the careers that you would have wanted to pursue. In that situation, therefore, how can you have that navigational map? You cannot have it except that there are three things that you can genuinely do for yourself. One is know yourself better. Oftentimes when I keep telling CEOs who I coach on a very regular basis, oftentimes people don't know themselves well. How can you reach a destination, because there are multiple destinations emerging every day, and every 5 years newer and newer destinations open up. In that situation, unless and until you know yourself well, where you want to reach, what are your drivers, what are your motivators, and what is the end destination, not in terms of rupees, money or positions, but in terms of what will give you a certain sense of fulfillment. If you have done your job well at the end of the journey, what is that sense of fulfillment that you will want to reach? Unless you know yourself well, you will never really find one navigational map that you should follow. So step number one that if I were to tell you is learn to know yourself well. Number two, in this fast changing environment, learning is becoming very, very critical because there is no one knowledge that I can give you. The pace at which knowledge is outdating itself is so fast that by the time you learn one set of things, they get outdated. New science comes in, new technology comes in, which tends to outdate the old knowledge that you have learned as fast as the new knowledge is coming. No longer is remembering important. We were all told that remember what you learned. Actually, forgetting what you have learned is very important, because unless you forget what you have learned earlier, you will not be able to absorb the new learning of the changing times. So therefore, know yourself well. Learn to be a learner all your life. And third, understand your values and your drivers well. Because predominantly, what is going to help you to assess the options that will come to you are your values and drivers. And unless and until you do these three things, you will never be able to make that destinational journey that you want to end. And therefore, if you were to look at the message that was up there and it is not there any longer, unless and until now you understand what you're saying. Every exit is an entrance somewhere else. So in your career, you are going to keep getting multiple options at all points of time. What is going to come up, where it is going to come from. Suddenly in the evening at 8 o'clock, one day you will get a message from a headhunter saying this is an option that has come up. Now should you look at that option versus the option you are in, etc., etc. But remember that every exit is an entrance somewhere else, and every entrance is an exit from somewhere else where it had ended. Therefore, your journey will be built on these exits and entry points. What you should enter and where you should exit is a function of three things. Number one, know yourself well, know your values well, understand your destination well, and learn to be a learner all your life. If you believe that your learning journey is over when you completed your MBA programs, if you believe your journey is over after you have become a boss and that you don't need to continue learning the new things, you need to remember that you cannot win wars of tomorrow with weapons of yesterday. The best of the kings and the best of the emperors and the best of the war strategists of the older times cannot today last one war for one day with a small country called Israel. Because weapons of yesterday, strategies of yesterday have no relevance today, and therefore you cannot win wars of future with weapons of yesterday. Therefore learn to be, because if you get these three things right, you will be able to evaluate the options that come to you in your careers at different points of time. And once you get those options, your ability to evaluate whether you should take that option or not take that option will then be easier for you to decide. Because career is not about your next job. Career is how you are going to build your journey from the start point to the end point. What are the capabilities you want to develop? What are the contributions you want to create and make? And what are the values that you want to build, not only for yourself, but the contributory value to the entire society around you? That is how you define what your career is all about. So it's all a function of, first of all, defining the career, knowing yourself well, evaluating the options that come to your hand, and then deciding how it is built. Does it make sense to you? I wish it would make that much sense to me, but though I said I thought this might and should make some sense to you. We professionals over a period of time are victims of our own incongruities. If you analyze our behaviors at different points of time while we make our choices, we are actually victims of our own incongruities. We pursue paradoxical career rainbows and try to hold that rainbow in our hand, and then we find that when we are frustrated, we enter a state of despair, and the entire cascading errors that we make in our careers actually brings us downsliding rather than takes us upside. Because we are not clear in our minds, because we are chasing rainbows for our career, and we try to hold that rainbow in our hand, and you find that you are not going to hold that rainbow, as a consequence of which you are going to suffer despair, demotivation, and thus make errors in your career which will not help you go up, but which will only take you down slides. We are competitive in nature, to the extent that sometimes I have seen professionals becoming combative about their careers, not only combative about their careers, but at the same time, they do not have the ability to take adversities and failures. I can tell you my experiences in Coca-Cola, where all the so-called tigers who believed that they were going to make some great contributions, when suddenly the pesticide issue hit the markets from 118% of growth rate, when the market collapsed to only 8% of the growth that we had promised for the year. All the so-called tigers who believed that they were really competing to become the future CEOs, and all who claimed that they could have done a lot of things verbally and in other presentations, when adversities hit the market, they could do bugger all, vanished, and cream de la cream actually became vanishing cream in the real-time situation. And therefore, these kinds of contradictions which will come will make you feel that you're pursuing rainbow careers than real-time careers. We asked for accelerated career growth. Each one, if you talk to people, and I talk to CEOs day in and day out, I've done it for the last so many years, over 4 decades now that I have handled careers of CEOs of different companies. They are all wanting and desirous of making their careers move fast, but nowhere comparable. They are willing to make investment in their own self-development which will help them to get there. So their belief is that abracadabra, some magic is happening as they are doing their jobs, that they will learn all the skill sets and then end up getting ready for the higher job. And under that mistaken belief, when they have not invested, they suddenly find themselves not being considered for senior jobs when the others who have invested have been considered, and thus they end up failing. Don't make that blunder. Invest in the destination you want to reach. Invest in your own development. Don't start believing that you have got all the capabilities you require, because magic does not happen when you are sleeping in the night. You have to make that magic happen. Have you ever heard this word called abracadabra? What is abracadabra? Jadoo mantra. Okay. You have heard magicians say abracadabra. Do you know the real meaning of the word abracadabra in Hebrew? Abracadabra means I promise to make that happen which I am telling you will happen. It says I'll promise to make that happen which I am saying I'll make happen. That means if I tell you that in my left hand suddenly you will see a rabbit, in 2 seconds I'll make the rabbit appear, and then abracadabra, the rabbit appears. And that is called abracadabra. You will not be able to do an abracadabra in your career unless and until you really invest, because there are no such magical moments that happen. The real abracadabra happens when you build your capability for the options that emerge, which you don't know. Because the technology and the careers in the field are going to throw options which you have till now never evaluated. So therefore your readiness is not for the options, your readiness is to build your capability such that you can evaluate those options and take those options when they come up. Look at organizations. They seek pride in saying that we have calibrated people in our organization, we do this with our people, we have these kinds of people. But look at the kind of investments they make. The investments they make in the development of their people is so meager that you sometimes wonder that are these organizations really making these kinds of big sounds and noises about their value proposition, about building people and enhancing the value of their human capability in real terms? Or are they only wanting to build big noise around their employer branding by telling people that we invest in the human capital, and they don't really end up investing in the human capital at all? So therefore the desire of the organization is to build better and better human capital, but they invest so meager. Therefore it falls upon you as an individual to build your career, because organizations only want people ready for their jobs. And your career is not limited to only their job. Your career is limited to options and alternatives available in the market. And they are not going to prepare you for that market. Because what they are going to prepare you are for a series of predictable future jobs that they see in their organization. Because they are a commercial organization which has to create value. Therefore, they are not going to invest. So no person who is talking about career management should even for a minute start believing that they can hand over the remote control for their career in the hands of someone else. You have to be forever in control of the remote control that manages your career and see how you are building and developing it. Don't rely on someone else. No coach, no mentor, no boss, no organization, no program is going to do that. Be in charge of your career. The day you give up your career charge is the day you are going to get frustrated in the shortest possible period of time. And the worst of all of this is that what I am telling you is not an unknown fact. People know about it, professionals like you know about it, I know about it, companies also know about it. And yet, nothing has been done about it. We have been talking about it and nothing is done. है शौक है सफर ऐसा कि हर मुद्दत से पहले हमने रास्ता भी न बदला और मंजिल भी न पाई. है शौक है सफर ऐसा कि एक मुद्दत से हमने मंजिल भी न पाई और रास्ता भी न बदला. We were wanting and desirous of reaching a certain destination which we did not reach. And yet we did not even change the route. So how are you going to be really doing that? Organizations are not going to invest, that's a reality. You are going to be dependent and then get frustrated at the end of it. So therefore the journey that you are going to talk about in terms of career management and in terms of what you want to grow into in the future is something that you need to take charge of and ensure and make it happen rather than relying on someone else to make it happen. Does it make sense? You can ask me a question any point of time. I'm not going to designate any special question in the session. If you feel you're in disagreement, absolutely feel free to raise your hand and ask a question. And I would love if you do that. Okay, so if there are any questions, please continue doing that. Now I'm going to be talking about certain generalizations which I see. Most of the people in this organization are from human resources, chief people officer, HR officer, talent managers, whatever. The greatest blunder that I see happening in the field today is the clarity on the definition of people and talent. They don't know the difference between people and they don't know the difference between talent. So some people say they are chief people officer. Some say they are chief talent officer. What do they predominantly end up doing? Near about the same set of things. Which clarifies that there is total confusion about it. The real differences between people and talent is that people is the entire segment of the market which represents people with capabilities who are likely to be suitable for a job that may exist in your organization. The entire range from where you could pull out people and they would reflect some capabilities which you believe would be suitable if they were hired in your organization. That's the people segment of the market. Talent segment is that segment which is a subset of the people segment which if hired reflects ability to do and contribute far better than the other people who if they were taken were put on the job. So ability of the talent to convert value in your organization is much faster and higher than the talent of people who may have capabilities but may not be right for your organization. And therefore it is critical for you to be the talent officer and not the people officer, because people may contribute little if you are taking from that segment. It is only when your ability to identify talent from amongst people that you will be able to generate real value for the organization. Therefore, what is your job? There are only 6 jobs that HR does anywhere in the world in that context. Get, give, grow, guard, guide, and govern. Get, give, grow, guard, guide, and govern. And only then from that segment of what you call people, you put it through these 6 processes of the organization, that they really end up creating talent for the enterprise. And that is what your role should be. So talent management, which is something which is broad-based, is actually putting these filters on to people in the people segment, so as that you are getting a higher capability of human resources in your organization, which can convert activities of the enterprise into the value that it wants to contribute. And that is one of the most important things that is very important. So the purpose of any talent officer or talent management process in the organization is to support the organization with human capital that converts opportunities into value faster. And that's what your role is. So unless and until you're clear about what is the larger perspective of what your job is about, you will never be able to manage talent in the enterprise. Keep doing the same activities, keep running your training programs, keep running communication for non-communication, finance for non-finance, HR for non-HR programs, keep doing the same appraisals, keep running communication skills program, keep running negotiation skills program, year on year, and you will not get any value. And the business will get frustrated with you. And they will say, why are you putting these resources? Because we have been doing it for last so many years and not getting results out of it. But you will never get results, because the focus is not on creating value. Focus is on the activity, which is a task that you want to take. Let me destroy some myths which exist in the minds of some people out here, before we get into how you should do career management and things like that. The value yield of talent is higher than the yield of people on a cost to contribution basis. Think about it. On a cost to contribution basis, because when you are taking people from the people segment to work in your organization, the contribution of people is much less than the contribution of talent, because talent is taken because it has unique ability to contribute more. So on a cost to benefit basis, the ability of talent to contribute is much higher than the ability of people to contribute to your business. Remove one myth from your mind. Number 2 myth, performance is an indicator of potential. And most organizations, because they have inability to identify or understand potential, and at some point of time, like my friend said that, that classical Amitabh Bachchan dialogue that, I'm locking the door and giving the key to you, Peter. Don't let me go out of this room till I open the key with the one which is in your pocket. So don't let me go out of this room or this state till I define to you what is potential, because when you are trying to understand career management, you are also having to necessarily define what potential is all about. And we will define it at some point of time. But look at this. If you look at the classical model of competence, a competence is built over 5 subsystems. One are your motives, second are your management assets, third are your traits, fourth are your knowledge, skills, and then traits and attitudes, skills, and then knowledge. Now, when you are looking at the current performance and trying to assess suitability for a future job, you are predominantly assessing what is called surface competencies, which means you are trying to see what knowledge he has, what skills he has expressed, what traits he has shown, and on the basis of that you are trying to make predictability of his suitability for a future job, and then go wrong about it, because you are assessing surface level competencies to deliver what succeeds only when core competence works. Because what really makes you deliver to the future value creation are your traits, motives, and your management assets. And those are the 3 competencies. So now the entire process goes crazy, because you're assessing something else and you're delivering something else. What does not deliver is what you are assessing. What can deliver, you don't know how to. And therefore, all those processes which you are running in your organization, so if the question is that what should you do for career management in your organization, certainly don't do trying to just do a judgment call that just because someone has performed well in the past, so prediction is that he'll be able to perform in the potential higher jobs well. That is a myth which theory and research has totally de-established in the marketplace. The fourth myth, unfortunately, is that talent is leadership dependent. Potential is yours, but talent is dependent on the ability of the leader to assess talent, to understand the talent's behavior better, to design unique individualized programs, to offer it motivation and internal motivation to be able to deliver. And therefore, if the leader fails, for no fault of talent it will fail. And therefore, you will find in most of the organizations when you do career management, that upon a leader changing, suddenly the guy who was supposed to be high potential falls from the high potential list and suddenly becomes average performer. And someone who the previous boss had said was an average performer suddenly comes high on the list saying he's a high performer. And what magic happened, what abracadabra happened, you don't know. But that is a function because talent for its identification and its growth is dependent on the leader. So unless there is a sharp leader, he is not able to grow talent in the organization. And wrong talent in the organization is directly an indication of wrong leadership in the organization. So my friend Kambuja was talking what we should do. Yes, when you are assessing it, the first indicator of poor quality of talent pipeline is your poor quality of leadership. Because leadership directly reflects the kind and quality of talent that is in the organization. What are some of the things that I want to talk about? Because I can keep talking about it based on my experiences. So I want to focus on some of the things that we do. I don't want to talk so much about performance because with all the people management professionals sitting out here, certainly all are experts of people management and performance management. We will focus more on potential. But let me give you some tidbits on performance management. That despite our systems being in place to manage performance for years and years, what are some of the major glitches and what are some of the best practices I have seen based on my working experience in Godrej, GE in USA, Coca-Cola in USA, Marks and Spencer's in Middle East and Australia, and SR, and then on my own consultancy. Number one is, organizations are not designed, very, very few organizations are designed to extract from the employees after recruitment what they have originally been recruited for. So whilst you are recruiting a person, you are very, very serious about what you need to get out of it and why he is the right candidate. But the process and the rigor that the organization needs to put in to extract that value after the salaries and compensations are given to the people, the returned rigor is tremendously missing. Therefore, he comes into the organization and he starts working and he starts doing what the previous guy has done or not done, or what the boss says he should be doing, but he is not delivering the real values that you saw at the time of recruiting him. Therefore, the entire organizational design fails because it is not designed to extract value from the talent that is hired in the organization. And thus performance management becomes very critical. Classical, huge, big time errors in matricization, in the matrix designed for the organization's delivery, in absence of scorecards. Even where I have seen strong scorecards in the organizations, they are actually designed to explain failures rather than prompt success. Because we continue to be rewarding efforts more than rewarding results. So if someone has put in efforts, we justify to say that the markets were bad and therefore awards have to be given because of the efforts. And when the markets are good, of course, we say that it is actually this individual who should be rewarded for doing what he has done. So whichever way you look at it, it is a good explanation to reward people, but not necessarily a good system to derive value creation of the enterprise, and therefore it tends to fail. And that is something that you will have to address. Otherwise, all performance management systems will end up becoming theories, and HR, unfortunately, this organization becomes the most hated department. Because the CEO does not want to take the ownership for giving this bad news that you guys are not delivering. HR is a procedural department which has designed the performance management system, and therefore is the sole pallbearer who is protecting the system when the CEO says, नहीं यार ये HR का बकवास है, ये कुछ नहीं कर रहा है, यार ये जबरदस्ती का process कहीं से लाके डाल दिया. So HR singularly represents that unwanted piece of the organization which leadership refuses to take ownership for, and the people down the organization certainly don't want, because it is going to make them accountable and responsible. Therefore the question is, what should and who should take the responsibility? Bell curves have gone, but not even 10% of the organizations have given up bell curves even now. In my consulting experiences, I come across so many companies which are even now stuck to bell curves. For long and for years we have written, we have said that organizations need to write obituary to the bell curve. It is dead and gone. It was designed for something else many centuries ago. Again, you are pulling relics from the past to run organizations of the future, and it's not going to work. At best, you create the kitty for rewards on the basis of the bell curve. But after that, how the business head or the departmental head wants to contribute that money in his department, leave it to him. If he wants to socialize, his call. He wants to give it all to one man, his call. He wants to give it on a bell curve, his call. But why does HR department become the singular pallbearer of a system that is dying, of a system that is unwanted? And that is where we end up becoming most unpopular. What is missing is the fierce conversation which we do nothing about. Half the time whilst people are saying that they do appraisals, you've got to get into understanding the quality of appraisals they have done. They have filled forms. Oftentimes they have said that they have discussed, but I have found that they have not discussed with the people down the line. When you go down the line, you will find that appraisals have not been discussed beyond the first two top levels, and the bottom levels have done nothing about it. They have only given a chart in which they have given ratings to you. What have you done about it? Because you can't do much about it any which ways. The most important part of appraisal, which I've seen happening in some of the finest banks that I have tied in, 2 days, because each one of them has got maximum 5 to 6 people who are the direct reporters. 2 days in every quarter automatically are reserved for appraisals. You go to a bank in any of the quarters, at the end of the quarter, after their entire business closure happens for the quarter, they take a holiday. They no longer actually need to take a holiday, because this holiday per quarter for year-end closing is not required, because now systems are doing it. What they end up really doing in all the foreign banks is, those 2 days, they complete appraisals of them. If you go to them, and I have gone to them, using boss, Adil, ye 2 din ko mat aana, appraisal karke dena, because my boss will not do my appraisal. Because the system is designed in such a way that if the boss does not set the appraisals of the people down the line, his boss does not sit to do his appraisal. Therefore, if you have to do your appraisal in the system, you have to attach the appraisals of the people down the line, and the boss and the manager reporting to him will sit with the subordinate of the manager to do a common review of performance. That is where fierce conversations exist. I was explaining to my friend this morning a very beautiful book by Peters. It says fierce conversations. It is important in life to have fierce conversations, and from corporate perspective, certainly fierce conversations. What is fierce? The etymology of the word fierce comes from the word truthful. The real meaning, original meaning of the word fierce is truthful. But truth became so scary that people stopped conversing around that and started projecting different kinds of things as the truth. And that is why fierce conversation, or in the original meaning, truthful conversations are required, particularly in a country like India, where we believe that we have to play the role of a big brother. We can't be giving bad news, we have to absorb the bad news. We have to be the protector of the family. And that is where the whole processes tend to collapse. So how do we create that sheer desire to do objective analysis of performance and have those meaningful, crucial conversations, those meaningful, fierce conversations, is where the entire performance systems fail. All kinds of performance systems. You have the SAP system, you can go to the Renko systems, you can have the Oracle system, you can have Forms system, you can have a hand, pencil and paper system. Systems don't make a difference. Systems don't deliver. The value comes from the conversations that we encourage in the system. The classical Indian socialization of rewards. We believe there is a rotating joy. Last year I gave you double increment. This time I will give someone else. Then I will give the third person. So the idea of giving rotating joy in the department so that I am popular and I continue to be the leader, and my engagement survey will show a good score, so when Mr. Kanduja will do engagement survey for my department, the scores of my department will look high. Because I have socialized my rewards. I have not only given it to the guy who is performing, but I have also given it to everybody else, so everyone is happy. So the engagement score of my department automatically goes up. And that is what starts hurting the organization. What I've also seen happening in organizations which fail is what is called talent zamindari. Talent is believed to be inheritance that my grandfather left for me in this organization, and therefore if I have good performers, I will not let them go out of my department even if it means their career not developed. Their career means उनको promotion मिलने वाला है ना, मैं अपने ही department में वही job के लिए उसको और एक promotion देती हूँ. तेरे को क्या फर्क पड़ता है, पैसे उतने ही मिलने वाले हैं ना. Not realizing that the intrinsic value of a career movement which will end up building the capabilities of the individual will never get done because he'll continue to do the same job. And therefore in most organizations you will find promotions given to people doing the same job over the last 7 to 10 years, and yet they are promoted from senior officer to senior executive to general manager to a vice president because of existence of talent zamindari. I won't let that guy go out and say, what does Coca-Cola do? Coca-Cola says you as a manager are certainly welcome to identify your high performers whose careers will make, because when you are having those conversations, you are telling that guy, no, you are a great asset and all. The top 7% of your asset becomes the CEO's talent. So the moment you are in that group, you are CEO's talent. And after that, your movement is not decided by you. He is currently working in your department. His movement will be decided by the group director of HR and the CEO, and you will not decide where he stays, how long he stays, where he goes. You will decide where he stays. So you have two options. Either you say he is not a high performer, he will get frustrated and want to move out, which you don't want. At the same time, he will be available in the larger system for a career. That's one of the best practices, not necessarily the best. But what I'm saying is you will have to find out, because these are realities which are happening in organizations. How are you able to find a solution to that? It's something that you have in your own hands. So these are some generalizations on performance management, and we will talk about, in case there are any questions at any point of time, about your experiences, your challenges, and then we'll try to see collectively how we can find a solution. But I am shocked at the total number of companies that I come across who say that they have got potential development or potential management systems and how they manage potential. And then I tell them, okay, fine, I will get into your system and advise you. First, just tell me, how do you define potential? Sir, वो तो define नहीं किया है. तूने potential define ही नहीं किया, तो what is your system targeted to achieve? And then they try to give some vampy, imaginary on the foot. We are all smart guys, HR guys are always very intelligent, they have a great gift of gab, have ability to stand up and make a lot of things up. So they try to build up some kind of a definition around what is potential and some general kind of English meaning of the word potential. Potential is built over clear 7 characteristics. If you analyze Procter & Gamble, you analyze Coca-Cola, you analyze Pepsi, you analyze any of these international companies, they have defined potential in terms of 7 distinct characteristics. So the definition that I have allowed reads, potential indicates initial traces of competencies. Initial traces of competencies as observed by the leader that reflects the possible ability of an associate to succeed and do better than anyone else in the department to handle bigger roles in terms of scope and size by a given date. So number one understanding you should have is that potential talent is like having a BBB, best before date. You have it on all food items. So if they are not consumed before a certain date, they become putrefied, you cannot eat. Talent comes with a BBB. If the talent is not given exposure, development, motivation within a certain time frame, it is not a perpetual thing that lies within himself. Either he will get frustrated at a point of time, or his talent will get wasted away. Therefore, the most important thing for you to realize is potential talent comes with a BBD. You need to identify what is that BBD and how you are going to convert that potential talent into real performance, or you were sitting on a gold mine, you did not mine it, now it is lost. Government has taken away your license, now you cannot mine it. As bad and as simple as that. It is only on the basis of traces. Have you ever been in a mining company? So at some point of time, one of our companies was a mining company. No one really knows, or we were in oil business, no one really knows in an oil well. E&P is one of the most difficult businesses. You can never know, and you will know, Kambuja, you have been in an oil company. You can never know what is actually the size of the well. Your Godavari basin had the same problem, where you at the time of going to government assess the well to have so much tonnage of oil, and when you actually went in, you realize it is not having that tonnage. Or exaggerated tonnage was existing, but real time it did not convert itself. Potential is like that, and that's the potential of the mind. In the same way, it's potential of talent. It is only the initial traces. It does not mean that it can convert itself into the kind of imaginary talent you believe it is, or can do the job for which you have identified it. It is only an initial trace. You have to go deeper into the talent, expose the talent, develop the talent, intrinsically motivate the talent, and then that talent converts itself. But left by itself, just by saying, "हाँ हमने identify कर दिया, तुम potential है," that potential will never convert itself into real talent. What are some of the best practices we have seen in development of talent? Number one, job rotation works. Classroom training has only got a 8 to 10% coefficient of success, which we measure. Any kind of classroom training, and most of us believe, whenever you talk to a senior guy and say, there are potential develop करना है, हाँ सर, हार्वर्ड का प्रोग्राम है. क्यों? हार्वर्ड का प्रोग्राम है क्यों जाना? You want to develop your potential. Your potential has nothing to do with the AMP in Harvard, which will cost something between 20 to 25 lakhs. But to him, he is not wanting to develop his capability, he is wanting to build his CV. So he wants that Harvard step for his CV, not to build his capability. Therefore, it is upon you to identify what are his capabilities, what does he need to develop, where are his skill sets, and not necessarily classroom inputs will help him. What I have seen succeeding very effectively is job rotation succeeding effectively, career coaching working effectively, CEOs, project teams working effectively. Pepsi did a fantastic job. What Pepsi did at a point of time, that all these so-called 10% of the people who were identified as high potential people, they were pulled out, and over and above continuing to do the normal jobs, was given one specific project which the CEO was directly responsible for, and he would directly assess. Because there is a tendency in the mid-leadership levels of an organization to not let that potential talent come up, to show the contributions of that potential talent as contributions of that manager, because manager also wants to reflect his performance. So he is not going to show the guy down the line who has high potential in a very great light. Therefore, all the people who were identified were put on a team, and cross-functional assignments of projects were directly given by the CEO. They worked with him, they got the limelight, they got the motivation, they got the ability over and above doing the normal jobs. So it is not that they were pulled out from the normal jobs, but special projects which were critical to the development of the business and its values. Thank you very much, you're a nice man. Were actually given, and that works. So therefore, for a while, don't start believing that sending people to Harvard programs or tying up with IIM Ahmedabad on some program, you can put a tick in your KRAs as an HR manager. Because all of us have got a KRA list in which we have to show what have you done for potential talent development. We create that lovely 9-box matrix, high performance, high potential. We place people and we put lovely, graphics around it. High performance, high potential is red heart or diamonds or whatever it is. And then we say, okay, we design programs along with so. Lovely. Lovely way to show exhibition of what you have done with the talent budget given to you. But at the end of the day, when you start measuring the benefits of the talent given by that, you will realize that your contribution to converting potential into real-time talent has actually only spent the money that was in the budget but delivered no value. And therefore, that is very, very important. Now, the ability that it has to show in the definition of potential, as I was telling you, is to do a bigger job, either in terms of scale or in terms of size. That means scale or scope. Scope means I may do vertical rotations, which means I will make you do 2 jobs which your other peer was doing in a different function. Or I may give you a laterally higher position without promoting you and expect you to perform for a while and see how you're doing there. So depending on what I see as your capabilities which have high potential and developmental need, I don't use the high potentials of positivity, I use the high potentials of developmental needs to then give you the kind of assignments. And that is what works in organization. That is very important. And as I told you, the most important thing is to identify a time frame in which this talent needs to be developed in joint consultation. If that does not work, talent has a huge tendency to waste itself away. As I spoke. So therefore, when you are talking about development of potential, it involves the same HR job of getting the right talent. So when you are assessing candidates, and we had the behavioral anchored interviews of competency assessment, have you really tried to find out the potential of the guy to deliver to higher jobs, or have you assessed him only with an intention to see whether he can do the job for which he has been selected? The general tendency is to find out the suitability of the job for which he is going to be positioned in the next 1 or 2 years or 3 years, but the potential that you are talking about is for a future job which is not even assessed when the guy is being recruited. So where does this magical quotient of potential talent come in if you have not even assessed that candidate when he joined to be considered for the higher jobs? And that doesn't work. Therefore, it is very important for you to, at the time of assessment, also assess his potentials to be able to decide as to what future jobs can the guy grow in. When you are designing people for, in fact, the question constantly comes, should you let people who are high potential know? And there are multiple arguments. Some people say, yes, you should let a guy with high potential know about it. Some people say, no, you don't need to know about it. Why you should not let them know? Because the moment the guy knows that he is high potential, there are 2 things which are going to happen. His behavior suddenly changes. he suddenly starts believing that he is God's gift to mankind. And certainly if not to mankind, to your company. He starts demanding attention, focus, compensation and a lot many things much higher than what he would otherwise want. And he becomes a high maintenance resource if you communicate. And the second offlet of it is that you are simultaneously communicating that actually those who have not been told are actually not the talent of the organization, which may not be true. Because talent is a reference of time, talent is a reference of the job. For all you know, a person who is identified as a high potential after 2 years may not continue to be the high potential. So therefore, to communicate is critical, because suddenly, all of us in India know that when the guy is going, we all say, "Arey, you are the greatest talent, actually you are suitable for 3 jobs higher, we are going to promote you," and suddenly all the promotion letters will come out, all increments will come out. We recognize talent only on the exit. But when he is exiting, he has another offer which is in his hand, and then that has a cascading impact in the organization, because people come and tell you, "मैं भी letter लेके आऊँ क्या, तो ही आप मुझे increment देना." So to avoid that kind of a situation, you have to find a mechanism within your system to communicate to him that yes, by goals and by things that we are doing for you, you are being considered as a high potential, but simultaneously to communicate a message in the organization that talent has an ability to be reassessed, and every 2 years a new list may come. For all you know, you may not continue in that list if you do not live up to your expectation, and someone else may come in. So people may see an opportunity to move upwards into that list if they are not already there, and the guys who are in that list are made aware that there is no exclusive club which guarantees them that forever and ever they will be on this list.
Which to say perishable potential. You have a potential
which can perish or it can fructify.
Yeah.
If it fructifies, you will continue.
Correct.
If it perishes and you don't show,
Yes.
it's gone. If you don't show the behaviors but only delivery, you're not there. Because my understanding from GE is, if you are high on numbers but low on the house, 1 year is all that you will be allowed. You'll be given feedback, you're delivering great numbers, good luck to you, but how you're delivering is not acceptable to the leadership model. Second year you are there, you're off from the list.
Sir, this perishable thing will also help that he will accelerate his
He will
process of development.
continue.
Otherwise, they become sluggish. They
Correct.
say, "Okay, I am already awarded that. I am,
I am the big boss,
Yes.
and all of you better know. कल से future में तो मेरा ही है."
So he slows down in fact.
Of course, he goes down,
Yeah.
and the others will feel demotivated when he goes down simultaneously.
Right.
Because now he is not contributing.
Correct.
It cannot be a 1 year's performance or 2 years performance which should decide. It should be a sustained performance. Also, what is important is how you reward them. So lots of people decide to give what is called the restricted stock options of the company to these people who are on the potential list. So for the period of time that you are on the potential list of listers, are given restricted stock options to retain them. Because I promise you, when these listers or high performing, high potential people actually go for interviews, they make it a point to tell that other guy who is interviewing them that they are a lister. And therefore, the listers will be given higher compensations and taken. But when you have given restricted stock options to them, which will grow only if they have been in the system for 5 years, and which will give them a very high value, then the desire of the lister to stay on in your organization will be very high, and also for that other guy to give so much of money to him will upset his appetite internally. And therefore that is what is going on. So communicate wisely, look at the reward system, identify who is the person nominated for the program, communicate to the rest of the people far more effectively, only then it can work.
And then others should know that they also have a chance.
Of course,
Yeah.
that there is an opportunity for you to come, and that is very important. But so which comes to the prime debate that we have always had. Is potential talent inborn or developed? Is it something that you nurture? Yes, maybe 2 minutes. My flight time is on. Okay, fine. Blame the airlines, don't blame me. Best before date is over. Next time you call someone from Bombay during the morning session. So the classical debate is whether talent is to be nurtured. Is talent nurtured or is talent inborn? And there is no debate about it, because now research has very clearly concluded that talent is developed. There is nothing called inborn talent. And they analyze who all? They analyze Mozart, who started playing at the age of 3. They analyze Tiger Woods. They analyze the life of Warren Buffett. They analyze the best of the wrestlers and the best of the artists, and came to a conclusion that in the 20,000 genes that the genomic code of the human body has, there is not a single gene which is identified with common performance or excellence in any particular field. Whilst genes are very clearly identified with the ailments that you can suffer. So if there are certain combinations of your genes, they can lead you to cancer, they can lead you to all kinds of ailments. That is established. But they have not been able to identify that all the great violinists, do they have any common genes? In the DNA coding, there is nothing. They found that actually Mozart's father was actually a music composer who exposed him in the environment earlier there, created fascination for music, put him through rigorous training, and then he became the Mozart that we know. And same was Tiger Woods' father. A lot of people don't know that Tiger Woods' father was also one of the world champion golf players who inducted him, created a fascination, put him through very, very rigorous training, and thus he became Tiger Woods. Warren Buffett's father ran an investment company where he was exposed at the age of 12 to analyze balance sheets. Your father and mother did not put us through analyzing balance sheets at 12. They would have mistaken themselves balance sheet to be bed sheet. So it is not that anyone is born with any of these genes which develops their capability. It is actually early creation of interest followed by rigorous training, systematic feedback, and that is called designed practice. Our concept of practice is repeat doing it again and again and that is practice. No. What is called, and there are lovely books in the market if you want to read, on how do you inculcate designed practice. Therefore the question coming is, how do organizations do this? How do they do early identification? How do they do rigorous building of interest? How do they create intrinsic motivation to perform?
So this is the name of the book?
Yes, I will give you the name of the book. It's called Design Practice. And how practice is designed and what do you need to do in design practice. Maybe someday when you will call me for a morning session, I will explain to you what is design practice. Maybe on the 9th anniversary. So this is what the role therefore of the organization is, that how do you design that within your organizational systems to identify and develop the potential.
So, is design practice same as design thinking?
No. Design thinking is different. Totally different. So who's going to do all of that? You have to work to influence people in your organization. That's it. I would like to conclude with a very beautiful quote of Rumi. It says, ख्वाहिशों से नहीं गिरते फूल दामन. ख्वाहिश तो सबकी होती है. I would also want to be developed. You would also want to be developed. Organizations would also want. ख्वाहिशों से नहीं गिरते फूल दामन. वक्त की साख को हिलाना होगा. कुछ नहीं होगा अंधेरों को कोसने से. अपने हिस्से का दिया खुद ही जलाना. That's what
Speaking of the engagement and involvement, sir, you need to be here for a while. As organizing body, our challenge and our difficulty is कि अगर मालिया साहब जैसे स्पीकर्स को इवन पूरे दिन के लिए भी अगर एंगेज किया ना, तो वी विल बी स्टिल फीलिंग शॉर्ट कि बहुत कम टाइम मिला. The wealth of experience and wisdom that he carries and those who are already on WhatsApp must be getting those small snippets. In very few lines, a lot of things come to us. When he told about 6 G's, get, give, to govern, I internally got reminded of my coining of 5 W's, which I have always been referring in various HR milestone programs. I have summed up the entire role in 5 W's, which says welcome, which takes care of everything right from induction till the onboarding and everything, selection. Welfare, taking care of all the kinds of welfare things. Then of late now the new upcoming thing of wellness, with ongoing stress issues coming into the organization. Then everything not taken care well, then it will be warfare. And everything not handled properly, finally farewell. So this is how the classic role of employee life cycle that we manage at various stages comes into the limelight. And when the Amitabh Bachchan dialogue of Diwar was cited again, with the potential thing being discussed, again at the back of my mind I got reminded of one small line but very powerful line of movie Hero, where Sanjeev Kumar in the quote says, "My lord, वो जो था है ना, उसे भूल जाइए, वो क्या है और क्या होगा उसे याद रखिए." So that's what the potential is. And when मंजिलें अपनी जगह है, रास्ते अपनी जगह, गर कदम ही साथ ना दे तो मुसाफिर क्या करे? तो मुसाफिर हैज टू लर्न कि हर कदम पर गिरे मगर सीखा कैसे गिरतों को थाम लेते हैं. The process of learning is ongoing, will not wait for 9th anniversary. We'll ensure that we have one more occasion to have you with us, and to express our gratitude and fondness, we would like to invite Mr. Manish from Tanishi. Mr. Manish is there. Okay, Mr. Maharshi from Ethos and Neeraj to express our love and affection in terms of a memento. Yeah.